The South African National Defence Force says it has returned thousands of vials of illegally procured immune-boosting drug Interferon to Cuba. This after the drug's illegal import, worth over 260 million rand, became another COVID-19 procurement scandal. A task team appointed by the Defence Minister today informed Parliament about the findings of its probe. To tell us more, I'm joined by eNCA's Lindsay Dentlinger, who's been tracking the story. It's one of those, Lindsay, where words fail to capture just, the ineptitude and the corruption and disregard for public funds, really, this particular transaction around the SANDF. So they've returned all these vials back to Cuba. What's entailed in this task team's report around this transaction?
So, Tulas, we have not had sight of the full report. This was really the task team just presenting their findings to Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Defence. Defence Minister Thandi Modise, for health reasons, not able to attend today's meeting, and therefore the report has not been publicly released, although we do understand that it is her intention to do so. But certainly on the face of it, the findings by this task team, the SANDF wanting to give the picture that they weren't trying to do anything untoward by importing this drug from Cuba. In fact, they say they were trying to protect our soldiers. This was at a time when a delegation of army people were visiting Cuba on totally unrelated business, they now say to us. They say they were in Cuba to iron out issues related to qualifications for medical students who are studying in Cuba, and during that visit they were shown this interferon drug. They were told how effective it is. They weren't led to believe that it could be a cure. You remember at that time there was no vaccine for COVID-19, but rather they were told that as an immune booster, or as a modulator as they call it, what it could do to help boost the systems of our soldiers who would then were at the time still to be deployed as part of the lockdown and as part of managing this pandemic. And so they thought that this might be a good idea to protect our forces here on the ground. And that is how that information came back to South Africa, and that delegation then put it to the SANDF's health personnel that they thought that this might be a good idea to import this drug. And so that is the explanation the task team certainly has put before Parliament today as to how it came to be that we were going to import this drug in the first place.
But now, what about the issue of the nature in which the expenditure was then undertaken? And what is the task team saying specifically about that aspect, as well as what they are recommending should be done?
So what the SANDF can't get away from are certain material facts. And one of those, what you point out there, the irregular expenditure, it was also the finding of the task team that Treasury said no to importing this drug, to deviating from procurement procedures, yet they still went ahead and procured it under old bilateral agreements signed by then Minister Lindiwe Sisulu with the Cuban government. So that's one thing they can't get away from. Another that they can't get away from, it has been pointed out that they were not allowed to use Waterkloof Air Base to import that drug. It is not one of the registered ports in South Africa for which medication can be imported, besides the fact that this drug is totally illegal in South Africa. And so these are things that still need to be ironed out. The task team has recommended, well, firstly, it recommended that at least 500,000 of those vials be returned to Cuba, and it was only once they had made this recommendation did the Army then share. In actual fact, the SA Health Professionals Council, they actually shared the fact that they had now received information that these vials had been returned to Cuba, which is one of the recommendations made, because the task team said even if they were to administer this drug, even if there were a clinical trial to use this drug now, they won't be able to use it before the medication expires, and so therefore it was recommended that it's returned. And so, as I say, only 2.5 hours later into this meeting, after listening to all these findings, we then learned that the the SANDF says they have indeed returned this medication to Cuba. But I don't think that lets anybody off the hook, and it's certainly another recommendation of the task team that the minister then decide what channels she's going to follow in terms of holding those accountable for making this illegal purchase.
Lindsay, I'm completely out of time, so a very short answer on your side. Do we know, returning the vials to Cuba, does it mean we get any of the 260 million rand back?
So that is one of the questions that have not been answered to us. This committee deciding that once the minister is well enough to attend the meeting, that they will then engage more robustly and ask the questions. So today we just had to accept information that was given, but it stands to reason that we probably will receive at least some portion of that money back if the drug is being returned.